for reference to the Jews had to resort to the Jewish forgery Pseudo-Hecataeus. And this is on the bridge. It says Aristobulus, writing circa 150 BCE, will likely have cited the source behind Diodorus Siculus' library, which he didn't, if it existed at the time. And Josephus is citing Aristobulus, and basically we know Aristobulus stuff is Pseudo-Hecataeus, because if it's not, then he would have would have stated what Diodorus had, which he does not, or something better, since he lived, before him. But we don't get that. We don't get none of that information. So, bunch of stuff to look at. Now let's continue down here. It says, thus, despite the doubt attached to many quasi-historical details in Aristobulus' works, it still appears likely that he was correct in such basic details as the Septuagint originating under Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who I always talk about, and the involvement of 70 scholars associated with the Judean Perusia in executing this project. We may therefore date the Septuagint with reasonably high confidence to the period of 273 to 269 BCE under Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who was a white Greek. Since the Septuagint provides the first objective external evidence for the composition of the Pentateuch, the date of the Septuagint translation becomes a terminus ab quem for the books of Moses, which that's Latin. That basically means this is the only time that you could date this, around this time. That's basically what it means. It's the limit, or the only time you could date something. There exists no external evidence that the Pentateuch was written earlier than this time. Boom. Than this time of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. A proposed date of composition for the Pentateuch anytime prior to 269 BCE is permitted by current evidence and must be seriously considered. Significantly, although external evidence for the Pentateuch is lacking prior to the Septuagint translation of 273 to 269 BCE, the Septuagint set off an explosion of derivative Jewish writing in the 3rd century BCE, both in Syria and in Egypt. The following is a list of the earliest known Jewish writings with approximate dates of composition. None of it predates the Septuagint Greek or the 4th century BCE. And as I said, if the stuff is legit, we should find stuff. Historians, people around that time should have been talking about, there's no way in the world you can have what happens in the Old Testament, not written about as much, and then have stuff that is like so meaningless, like just talking about the gravestones of the Greeks. So elaborate, same thing with the Egyptians. And if they do all this stuff depicting what happened in these people's life that we can find, no way all of this stuff goes down and then we find nothing on the Hebrews. And again, as I pointed out, Herodotus, Greek historian, says nothing about the Jews. One of the things he cited says, neither Herodotus nor Hecataeus of Abdera claimed to have consulted the Jews. Rather, the Egyptians were regularly cited as authorities throughout Diodorus Book 1, thought to have drawn heavily on Hecataeus of Abdera. Hecataeus of Abdera appears to have drawn exclusively on Egyptian oral sources supplemented by Herodotus. Never talked to any Jews because they didn't exist. It says here, Hieronymus of Cardia, the historian of the Wars of the Diadochi, 323, when Alexander died, to 278 BCE, fought under Antigonus Monothalamus in Palestine in 312 BCE and was assigned to supervise the collection of Ausfat or asphalt from the Dead Sea. He never mentioned the Jews. I'll leave it at that. And it says down here, the earliest Greek writers who mention the Jews thus provide no external evidence of new developments in the evolution of the Torah. At the time of the Elephantine Papyri, 494 to 400 BCE, we have authoritative Jewish priestly regulations, but no evidence that these have been committed to writing. The Elephantine Papyri also testified to toleration of practices contrary to the Pentateuch, as late as 315 BCE, Theophrastus described contemporary sacrificial practices among the Jews that the Hebrew Bible condemns as heterodox. The first mention of Moses as Jewish founder and lawgiver occurred in Hecataeus' Aegyptica in 320 to 315 BCE. Manetho also mentioned Moses probably not long thereafter. Neither author attributed writings to Moses, although both appear to have viewed him as the lawgiver of the Jews. Other than the disputed fragment of Hecataeus in Diodorus Siculus Library 40.3, the Septuagint translation is the first definite evidence of Jewish writings. So it's clear as day what's going on here. The stuff that they was writing about contradicts the Hebrews, their supposed doctrine. And they're reading this stuff and it's like, no way this could be Hebrews if this stuff is real, because they're doing stuff contrary. And then to really dig deeper into this, you got to understand that these are Greeks. Plain and simple. These are people who are, even if they're black, they're people who was basically grew up in Greek understanding of things. This is later after the conquest of Egypt. Egypt is over 100 years gone now and conquered around this time. So we're talking about a couple 100 years later, so they are basically being indoctrinated into this Hellenization and the rituals. So contrary to what was written about, what must have happened is they came up with the story. They came up with who these Jews are supposed to be. And they got priests, they got people to go out and spread this story so it reached the ears of historians and people who was documenting the times. So all these historians you have, when you start to look and research this, they gathering around, they're trying to figure out, okay, we know these people are Jews, these people are supposed to be these people, but they're saying this is what happened to them. This is who they are, and so on and so forth. Let's validate this. And then they're going out. Now, we don't even know, one, Hecataeus, and what he actually said. We don't even know, because everything seems to be in, fragments. We can't get no real information because it's in fragments. But they have the fragments to say, oh, this person existed because we have fragments. But there's still no way to know if he existed or if he actually wrote this stuff. But there's one huge thing going on here that a lot of people can't fathom and don't understand to even ask the question. You have the Egyptians putting out this mythology, the Greeks copying that and putting out this mythology, right? So the biggest thing for me that drove me crazy for months in really studying all this, the biggest thing that drove me crazy was, why? For what? What is the point of this? And you have to understand what I mean by this is there's so much going on around this time. There's so much that needed to be learned, by the people. So you have all of these civilizations even up till now. You have, Egyptians having this knowledge, the Greeks having this knowledge. You have later on, you have priests, preachers, governments, all these people claiming to be good. Secret societies and all these people claiming to be good, claiming to want the best interests of the people. I'm here to help you. I'm here to establish, this order so I can help you. Everything is supposed to be to help the people, but none of them are helping the people. And it's like, okay, you're trying to help me, but then I walk into this society, everything is coded. Why is everything coded? So you're trying to help me, you're supposed to help me. I come to learn, but you're teaching me in codes, right? Secret society. Then time passes, we get religion, but we open the Bible. What the hell is all this? You're trying to save my soul. This is the most important book in teaching in the history of mankind, and this is how it's written. This is how you teach it to us, and then our teachers don't follow the book itself. What is this all about? What is the joke here? What's going on? So you have this, and let's take it back. You have the Greeks going to the mystery schools. They beg and plead to get into mystery schools. They finally get in there, right? And remember, the Greeks are always trying to rationalize, because they couldn't deal with spirituality. But they get into the mystery schools, right, finally. And then the Greeks are thinking, this is our shot. This is our chance. They get into the mystery schools and they come out and do what? Man, know thyself. They follow exactly what the Egyptians are doing. Man, know thyself. Now, many researchers will tell you that, well, the Greeks most likely helped to conquer Kemet because they probably felt like the Egyptians was bullshitting them. The Egyptians just not giving them all the information and knowledge. So they say, okay, we're going to get in there and conquer the place and take over because they're hiding something that must be amazing from us. What is with all this secrecy, all this esoteric jargon? I'm coming to the school to learn. This is important. Stop playing with me. Teach me what I need to know. This is supposed to be the most important information of all time. Teach it to me. And you go in there and it's esoteric and you can't fathom what's going on. The other Greeks are coming out not saying much. They're saying, man, know themselves. They sound like the Egyptians. So Kemet is conquered, right? Kemet falls. The Greeks get in there. They get the information. They leave the gold. They leave shit intact. They leave so much wealth in Egypt. They got what they got and they ran out of there and they left, right? Little time passes. The Greeks start to build their civilizations even bigger. And what do? Exactly what the Egyptians do. Mystery schools. Hiding esoteric information in buildings. Secret societies. You have these philosophers coming out and start doing exactly what the Egyptians did, teaching esoterically, right? And it's like, wow, it gets worse. Not only are they doing what the Egyptians did, but they start teaching this esoteric talk, but then they get in there, they get the knowledge, then it's like, oh well, forget everything that we made. Forget Zeus. Forget Greek mythology. Forget all this stuff that we was talking about with the Elysian Fields. Forget all of that stuff. We're going to create these new gods, this new concept, which they forgot about, Greek mythology. And what did they do? They switched it up and they gave us, the biblical stuff. So as I said, and I always point out, okay, well, we're going to take this concept of Pandora's box and give you Eve and the apple. We're going to take Deucalion and Pharaoh and give you Noah's Ark and the flood story. Samson, Hercules. This whole thing, Hercules, Samson, they took old Greek stuff that was theirs, switched it up. Now, many people will look at it to say, well, of course, to deceive people because, the Egyptians would know these stories from the Greeks. But that's not the point. The point is why, right? Keep this concept in your head of why. Why? So they do this and they switch the stories over to give us the Bible with all this esoteric Greek mythology, Egyptian stuff in it, right? Then, as I said, it get worse. You have this happen. You have later the Romans come in. Because remember, the Romans, they did the same thing. They went in there to the mystery schools. They went to Kemet to learn to get the knowledge. They went back home and did what? Exactly what the Greeks did. Roman mythology. Started making these stories, right? They conquer a massive empire, an incredibly powerful empire that can topple anything, right? And what do? They go and follow the same path. Now, before Rome, while the rise of Rome is happening, what do the Greeks do? The Greeks, they come out, as I said, teaching this information, and then they start massacring each other. Not just over land and power, but over how it was going to be distributed and how they were going to go forward as far as growing their civilization. Because clearly, people was like, we killed our allies, people who taught us so much stuff. We lost so many men and soldiers. We spent years, decades, perfecting this master plan to finally defeat the Egyptians. And we do that just to copy off of their shit that they done? Just to come up with stories and tell stories? Remember, you had Hellenization. We did all this to spread a story, a mythology that we made up. We killed all these people, took all these lands and golds to spread a story. That's the legacy. To spread a story, to tell people tales and stories. What is the point? So you had the wars of the Diadochi, which only ended because one, the Africans started building kingdoms, rebuilding kingdoms, and two, Rome was growing in power. And as I said, Rome grew in power, right? Rome goes in, conquers the Egyptian. So much war going on. So powerful Rome was to conquer all this land that they conquered. And then they finally beat their rival. They beat the Greeks. And what do? Continue Hellenization. They beat them. And it's like, okay, we beat y'all, but look at how Rome was structured. The Caesars, the glory of Rome, and the direction it was going. They beat the Greeks, and they copied the Greeks, and they continue Hellenization. Why is that? So you gotta start looking now and like, what is this? Okay, boom, y'all written the Pentateuch, the Old Testament. Okay, we're gonna copy that. We need a New Testament. Think about what I'm saying. You had Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, these stories. Fast forward, they created the Bible. Then you have the New Testament. Different kingdoms, but following this concept. So Rome comes into power. Rome copies what the Greeks does, and then they do exactly what the Greeks did. It's a civil war. The Wars of the Diadochi was basically a civil war. Then the Romans do the same thing after they conquered the Greeks. There's a civil war in Rome. Everybody's fighting because they don't understand what are we doing here. Years, centuries of war to write a book with stories in it? Huh? This is what we're doing to spread this book knowledge? We did all of this not for gold and glory, but to spread a story? What is this? So you had civil war in Rome, and then you had the creation of the papacy after that civil war, to which you remember all the papal laws, and everybody said this is it. Everything. They put all their eggs in this whole Christianity bag, and they basically said, this is our basket. We ride with Christianity from here on out, and it's still to this day Roman Christianity, right? Then you have the Crusades. They basically go out and wipe out any opposition that could possibly rise up against the papacy, and anybody that can come into, any type of who can cause any harm to Rome and the papacy. Carve these people up. You have the Crusaders go out there and kill all these people. The Knights Templar are going to kill all these people, and all these people with knowledge was wiped out. So you go and look, Greece. The population is 90%, Orthodox Christian. You look, England, Germany, Russia, all of the European countries are what? Christian. So they built their empires based off of Christianity, right? Built it based off Christianity. Then you have Rome build its empires. They had the Crusades. They wipe all these people out. We come into the time of King James, and then you have these kings in England. Same thing. Get with Rome. We need a Bible. Okay, we need another Bible. Okay, we need another Bible. We need a bishop's Bible. We need a great Bible. We need all these Bibles to do what? Tell a story. To run our kingdom off a story. And of course, you will look at it and say, well, no, they're just telling the story because the story was supposed to captivate people. There are other ways of doing this that don't involve the story. So the question is this. The people of that time, how could they put their faith? Everything is based on Christianity. Everything was based on these stories. The whole morality of all these people are based on these stories, and the people allowed this to happen. So again, you follow it all the way back. Rome. Everything that was done before they conquered the Greeks, which you have the Caesars and everything going on. Before they conquered the Greeks. Remember, you got the Caesars going on, they got their gods, they're establishing themselves as gods. Their civilization is going a complete different path, right? Same thing with the Greeks before they conquered the Egyptians. Civilization is going a complete different path, even though they're copying the Egyptians. Remember, they didn't have these concepts until later on. But then once they get the knowledge from the Egyptians, everything changes. Same thing with Rome. As soon as they get the knowledge from the Greeks, which they got from the Egyptians, everything changes. So the question is, what is it about these stories? Think about it. These mythologies that is so fucking important. Do you understand what I'm saying? What is it about these stories, even still to this day? We got the Bible, we got these stories. That's the foundation of everything that we're doing. What is it about these stories, these mythologies that the Greeks found so important, the Egyptians found so important that they wrote about it, and that the Romans looked at this stuff and said, this is the way to go. The Greeks said, this is the way we're supposed to go. And again, it all gets into universal law. It's just that simple. So go back and look and see that throughout this whole pairing we can see between the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians, they were still following these concepts that are basically stories about who we really are. Understanding that, I understand the story is going to tell us some truth, but it's just a story. Why not just tell us straight out what's going on and what the hell is out there? All these fucking stories. Like, tell me the truth. Yeah, it's frustrating, and that's what the Greeks felt back then, because they didn't know. They were frustrated by it. And then they did the unthinkable, and they fucking killed the people that can save their ponds. Massacre them. And they got the knowledge to only figure out what? To only find out what? Exactly what they was telling them. And they had to continue that concept. Think about it. Think about how stupid the Bible is when you read it. Oh, really? You got a woman from a man's rib. Really? Oh, talking snake, talking donkeys, right? Okay, so this man walked on water. Sure. Think about the stupidity of it. How absurd it sounds. But people believe it. They gave their life for it. They're willing to die for these stories. Think about that. You have to think about how they could have easily came up with a better story that's more believable for the people if this is so important. More believable. If it was just about, for those of you who are going to say, no, they did this just to trick the people. Or if you're trying to trick people, there's smarter ways of doing it than to come up with these stupid stories. I can tell you a bunch of whoppers to try to get money out your pocket. And they sound as stupid as these stories in the Bible. I'm not getting no money from you. They could have came up with better stories. These are esoteric stories, and they're told this way for a reason. Understand? So that's telling you that there's a reason behind the esoteric parables in the Bible and why they're told that way. There's a reason behind all of this and why this is all esoteric. And as I said before in the beginning, I can't just tell you, because you have to make the choice.